Colonel Rob Maness has a lifelong record of providing dedicated service to this nation. Having worked his way up from the enlisted ranks to full colonel, he served our country for more than 32 years. He has served as a bomber squadron commander, bomb disposal technician, Joint Chiefs of Staff Operations Officer, assisted the National Security Team with the campaign plan for the global war on terrorism. He authored the first theater nuclear war plan and served as the Vice Commander of America's largest airborne intelligence wing. Colonel Rob Maness is a true American hero. This is Rob Maness Live.
That's the new governor of the Commonwealth of Virginia. Abigail Spanberger ran for that office as a moderate. But the executive order that she talked about is state and local police not cooperating with ICE to get criminal illegal immigrants. There's also a list of, now the Democrats control the legislature, that a number of bills that have been put forward. You can't read it here, but let me just go through it. Sales tax on Uber Eats, Amazon. Sales tax on admissions to a variety of businesses. Create 2 new higher tax brackets. 10% tax bracket for anyone making over $1 million. 3.8 investment tax. Raise the hotel tax. New personal property tax on landscaping equipment. Ban gas-powered leaf blowers. Guarantee illegal aliens free education. Make it illegal to approach somebody at an abortion clinic. Extend the time absentee ballots can be received after Election Day. Allow people to cast their votes electronically through the internet. Expand ranked choice voting. Extend the deadline for ballot curing. Redact the addresses of political candidates from FOIAs. Add Virginia to the National Popular Vote Compact. Make it illegal to hand count ballots. $500 sales tax on firearm suppressors. Assault weapons and large capacity magazine ban. 11% sales tax on all firearms and ammunition. Prohibit outdoor shooting of a firearm less than 5 acres. Lower the criminal penalties for robbery. Ban the arrest of illegal aliens in courthouses. Remove mandatory minimum sentences. Allow localities to install speed cameras and replace Columbus Day with Indigenous Peoples Day.
Wow.
So elections have consequences, Josh.
What a spectacular reminder that we no longer live in an era where there's an existence of a moderate Democrat. I think for the last 6 months, for those of us who pointed out that the Mamdanis of the world had taken over the Democratic Party, we were assured, no, that's not the new face of the Democratic Party. It's people like moderates, Abigail Spanberger. I mean, she's there for a cup of coffee, and all of a sudden we have a communist manifesto out in front of us. This is going fast and furious, but it is how Democrats govern. Regardless of what they say, even in a state, a purple state like Virginia, Youngkin didn't govern as a right-wing lunatic. She's trying to take it so far left, it's almost unrecognizable.
Good afternoon, my fellow Americans and patriots, and welcome to More War Monday on the Rob Maness Show. We're live on Worldview Tube and our X Spaces simulcast. I got to tell you what, folks, they're trying to turn the Old Dominion into East California. If you heard that list, I mean, this battle is raging right now. Virginia is in a hard left turn with radical Democrats pushing aggressive policies like what you just heard, gerrymandering schemes that through controversial redistricting referendums that could make it a 10-to-1 Democrat advantage in congressional seats. 10-to-1. Holy cow. Well, Abigail Spanberger, the current governor, who just won an election and former CIA operations officer, I might add, is right in the middle of it. She's leading the charge. That's her agenda you just heard there. And she's starring in ads and voting early to sell this power grab of redistricting, even after previously saying she had no plans to redistrict the state. This isn't about fairness. It's about rigging the map to protect their agenda. Higher taxes that crush working families, relentless attacks on our God-given Second Amendment rights. You got to be kidding me. And policies that make everyday Virginians feel like strangers in their own state. Wow. What? Let me just tell you what. They are really, really backing this up, and they're focused on consolidating power, and that's what it's really about. The real issues like affordability and security get pushed aside. Virginia helped birth this nation with principles of liberty and limited government. Think about it. Liberty and limited government. But now we're in a fight against one-party rule. And today we're bringing on a true fighter who's been battling these forces for years in the trenches of the Virginia Senate. Senator Bryce Reeves was raised from humble beginnings, first on a farm and a ranch in Colorado and later in Texas, where his parents built small family businesses. One of them even proudly sells his mom's pies. Every man in his family has proudly served in the United States military, and Bryce and his older brother Blaine were the first to attend college, and he graduated from Texas A&M. I got a lot of friends from A&M, Aggies. Bryce became an Army Ranger. He later served as a narcotics agent and became a small business owner. He then furthered his education at George Mason University, the University of Virginia Sorensen Institute, Harvard University's Kennedy School of Government, one of my alma maters, and the U.S. Army War College. Senator Reeves carried these same values of hard work, faith, and service into this political career that he started in 2011 when he beat a 28-year incumbent on a platform of lower taxes, more transparency, and putting the needs of his district first, defeating Ed Houck. And his journey from dirt poor farm to the Virginia Senate reflects a lifelong calling to protect the least, the last, and the lost among us. Senator Bryce Reeves, sir, welcome to the Rob Maness Show. It's good to have you.
Colonel, it's great to be with you. And, you know, I can't say enough about the work you're doing to get the message out. You know, Virginia is turned upside down in one election. I've been screaming from the rooftops to my colleagues in other states that it's coming to a show near you. And, you know, when you listen to Brett Baer go over that list, I think I have PTSD because I just got out of session having to vote red as many times as I have. But I just heard the Christmas list. That's the Christmas list of a national party and what they want across the board, regardless of whatever state. And they're going to work and they're going to continue this effort to go and drive and go and coalesce around these messages. And they're just going to lie to you. You know, Abigail Spanberger ran as a moderate, or at least she was known as a moderate while her time in Congress. And, you know, let me tell you a little bit of something about Abigail Spanberger. And you already know this, sir, from your time in DOD, working with other three-letter agencies. You know, she's a CIA operative, and the job of a CIA operative is very, very easy, and it's quick and it's simple. It's to gain your trust and exploit it to the fullest extent to the benefit of the United States or to their personal agenda, and that's what she did. She flat out lies. And let me tell you, she's very vindictive. I happen to give a quote to the New York Times article. There's a big fluff piece out there, and if you haven't read it, sir, I would tell you, take the time to read the article because she will absolutely reveal herself to you in that. I can't believe her comms people let her speak so openly about how she manipulates people. But the reality is, I said the only difference between her and Mandami is that Mandami has the stones to admit he's a socialist. Well, she didn't like that. So she had it worked out with the Rules Committee because we had a special election to bring a new member on, and according to the rules, when they do that, they can reshuffle committees, and she made sure I lost one of my most powerful committees that I've worked on forever to get there, and she took away Commerce and Labor. So I told her, why don't you just take all my committees, and then I'll have more free time to just beat on you. So, you know, that's the governor we have. She's just awful. You know, I don't trust her as far as I can throw. We're about to lose the Second Amendment right, First Amendment, you name it, we're losing it.
Yeah, exactly right. Let me ask you this, Bryce, since I almost said California, since Virginia really is turning east to East California, are your constituents surprised, or are you in an isolated, very red district that you don't have anybody that really would have voted for Abigail, because she was really showing herself and messaging herself truly as a moderate, you know, kind of an old style Southern Democrat type person. Are they surprised?
I think a lot of people are having buyer's remorse. You know, there were a lot of people who didn't come out to vote. And in our last election, gubernatorial election, you know, we had the perfect storm. And what I mean by that is we had a government shutdown, and our three top candidates started not as a team. They were somewhat divided. Governor Youngkin put his finger on the scale in that race. I don't think he should have done that. But that's kind of the past. The party didn't come out like we should have, we could have, and now we have buyer's remorse, and especially those people that didn't come out has been a real challenge. I think they are awake now. I have some good news for you, sir. If you want a field report based on that April 21st election, here's the current sit rep. The reality is that the Democrats have spent $28 million to date. Hakeem Jeffries is still pouring millions of dollars in. Soros, you can't buy up any more airtime, and it's some of the most expensive TV time in Northern Virginia. Having to deal with that in my district, but the reality is they haven't moved the scale, and I think it was either 52 or 54% of Virginians are still against that, and that's regardless of party. That's overall. So they haven't moved the scale, and I think with you couple that with what Brett Baer just listed, and that's not everything. There's still more, right? I think it's going to say a lot about the midterms coming up, and that people have experienced it in Virginia. Enough people have talked about it. It's been talked about at the national level. Folks like yourself are getting the word out, and the reality is, I think, we're going to have to live with it. If this thing goes through and it passes, you can write Virginia off. And I'm a best case, worst case. As you said, I'm an Army Ranger, so I'm going to expect the worst and hope for the best. But the reality is that if they pass this referendum, it'll be decades before we see the light of day as Republicans.
Yeah, and it's perfectly clear, Bryce, that this is winnable. You mentioned Governor Youngkin. His victory that occurred was really the MAGA Republicans that turned out for him, and it wasn't predicted to happen that way. So it's entirely doable. We've just got to get people have to pay attention and have to get out there and do their thing and get all their people out like they did when Youngkin won, because a lot of people predicted that he wouldn't win. Because Trump was dragging people down and those kind of things, but it really was in the South, central and southwest part of the state, those MAGA Republicans that turned out for him, wasn't it? So it's doable.
Yeah, absolutely. The MAGA force was, Trump didn't lose the state by very much. If you really look at it, I think it was 46% is what he took. Youngkin has left his administration. We had a $2.7 billion surplus. $156 million in capital investments. We had given money back to the taxpayers of Virginia. We were ranked number one, and then I think when Youngkin left, because of all the other things, not our fault, we were ranked number 4. Number 1 fell to number 4 with CNBC, and I've been saying since Spanberger's come into play, I'll bet you we wind up lower than Maryland this year with CNBC of where we're going. And, Youngkin had worked so hard to stop U-Hauls from going out of the state that now I think there's a reverse of that. And I know personally a lot of big name companies where their administrations are talking about leaving the state. They need stability. This is not stability. She said she wouldn't get rid of right to work, but they've gutted that bill so much so that right to work is non-functional anymore. So it's just a sad state of affairs. But the reality is the way we win this is exactly what you're saying, sir. We've got to have a strategic plan, an operational plan, and a tactical plan. And we've been doing that. We won 2 years ago when I was up for re-election. We won a seat, but we didn't quite get to 21. But we're at 21-19 right now in the Senate. The way we did that was we won the early votes. And all of our Senate seats except for one that we couldn't hold, and it was in the middle of Richmond. So Republicans learned on that. The other thing we have to do is we have to start getting absentee ballots out there because the left has figured that out. We have 45 days of early voting. The statistics on an absentee ballot are about an 86% return rate. So think about that. If you have only presidential candidate or only presidential voters that come out that don't come out in these midterms or come out, we have races every year in Virginia and they just get burned out. We lose those votes, whereas the Democrats mail these things out at an 86% return rate. That's how they're beating us. We win election day hands down, but after the count all the votes, we lose because of absentee. And so we've been working really hard on that. We're trying to get in front of that curve, and I think we're making those gains.
Yeah, and that works too. Look, I don't like early voting and mail-in voting, but if you have that system, you got to learn to push that system. That's how we won Pennsylvania in the 2024 presidential election. The state that put the president over the top was because we went out and we increased the mail-in vote share by 33%, and we knew that if we got to 30%, that the president would win, even with the fraudulent ballots that showed up in 2020. Well, Bryce, we got to take a break. When we come back, I want to talk a lot more about this redistricting plan, but also about how the Democrats, not just in Virginia, they wield power when they get in office as opposed to what Republicans do, and how we could change that. We'll be right back with Senator Bryce Reeves from Virginia.
I would finally ask Governor Spanberger, what is she doing to work for us? She spoke about our storied history as a nation and how our forefathers stood up and demanded more of their leaders. Today, Virginians demand more of their governor. They want a governor who is a woman of her word, a governor who remembers she was a vocal supporter of the 2020 constitutional amendment to put redistricting in the hands of a bipartisan commission, a governor who stays true to her promise, a promise made just last August where she would not pursue redistricting and gerrymandering in Virginia. Last night, the governor boasted that her party is stepping up to run in 2026. Well, Mr. Speaker, it's easy to step up when you've already handpicked your own voters through gerrymandering. Virginia deserves a leader who keeps her word and stands for fairness. Mr. Speaker, I hope Governor Spanberger will rise above the political fray to uphold the Virginia standard of honesty and fairness.
Welcome back to the Rob Maness Show. It's More War Monday, and my guest today is Virginia State Senator Bryce Reeves, who is a Texas A&M graduate, Army Ranger, and has been through a lot of the alma maters that I've been to from a higher education perspective. Bryce, coming back into this, those were just wishful thinking words from that delegate there in the Virginia legislature. Unfortunately, Spanberger is wielding political power like no other than when you see a Democrat in power, similar to what Nancy Pelosi did when she had a very slim margin, almost as slim as what Mike Johnson has today. She went ahead and wielded power to see what she could get away with. That's exactly what the Democrats are doing in Virginia, isn't it?
Yeah, look, you're a military officer, a retired colonel, so let's be straight, right? The American fighting men and women are taught to have a brain, and they're taught to think down to the lowest level of command, right? A private Joe Snuffy knows the mission set and will execute the mission. And, that's why the American military is one of the best forces in the world today. When you look at the communist military, they were having to send if you look at Ukraine recently, their generals were dying on the battlefield because their soldiers couldn't think for themselves. Well, I equate that to the Republican Party. The Republican Party is like our military today. when you look at the Democrat Party, they're much like the Russian military, where they have one leader and they follow in line, and you know, they're like fire ants. They attack viciously, but they stay together no matter what happens to them. And you know, I don't want to lose that aspect of our party where we're free thinkers and that we have the ability for autonomy, because we obviously, I think we do, at least in the Senate of Virginia, come up with the best solutions when we all don't necessarily all agree, but we have the opportunity to voice our opinions and come to a consensus on where we stand on policy versus the Democrats. So, you know, anything this governor says, and you know, Colonel, we talked about this a little bit earlier, I don't believe a damn thing she says. Nothing. You know, it's what Reagan used to say, trust but verify. We'll start verifying everything she's putting out there, and you'll find out that she's lied about all of it. But, you know, Abigail Spanberger has one thing she wants, and I will tell you that's going to be the presidency of the United States. She will shuck that question day and night, but she is the diamond darling of the party now going forward. You know, they don't have a huge bench, but they love her, and I call her Hillary 2.0 because she's a younger version of Hillary, but just far, far left of where Hillary is. And I think that's where their party is.
It's interesting, you know, this redistricting plan. Where did it come from? Because she actually, as was mentioned in the opening clip, she actually voted for the bipartisan commission legislation and supported that. Where did this redistricting plan come from?
Well, I think this came from the national party. I think they're looking at the opportunities of what states where they have majorities they can shove this down based on, you know, they want to blame everybody else instead of do the Virginia way, which is the right way, the moral compass way. Like, you know, I think Indiana's Republicans said we weren't going to do it. So, you know, they did what they thought was right in their legislature. You know, Texas did what they wanted to do. And, you know, I think Virginia's responding to Trump derangement syndrome. They definitely have it. Every issue we argue on the floor, they bring up Trump. I mean, they cannot get enough of saying, you know, bad things about our president. If we'd have said half the bad things they say about, you know, Obama or Biden, they would have tried to censure us. And, you know, it's okay for them to do it, but it's not okay for us to do it. So every time they get up and start ranting and raving about our president, we all just kind of chuckle and, you know, catcall on the floor, not in the decorum of the Senate, but we're just tired of, you know, eating crow every day because all those bills that were mentioned on Brett Barr, that's happened. And we're having to vote on these things, and it gets very frustrating having to explain to your constituency that Democrats lied to you, and they don't want to believe that. And now they're seeing it, and I don't want to be the senator who goes, hey, I told you so, but I tell them that all the time now. It's irritating because, you know, most people don't give 5% of their time to politics, and when you go to them and you're saying, hey, this is really important, you know, they have their lives, and I understand that. They have their lives to live, but the reality is this affects everyone. And, you know, I think, you know, Virginia has always been on the map as a leader going forward in our country. It's, you know, our first government was set up here, and you move forward from there. Our founding fathers, most of the presidents, 9 of them came from Virginia. So, you know, we're a place that is key on the map, and I'm embarrassed where we are right now. I mean, I have to take some ribbing from some of my colleagues in other states, but I'm more warning to them that, look, if it can happen to us, it's going to happen to you. And this is the plan. These are the same plays that a football team runs every year, and with some tweaks. And that's what they're doing. And they're running it from the national level. That's who came up with this. The speaker, Scott, came up with this plan with Hakeem Jeffries and the Democrats. And, you know, they had their map makers come down, and this is where they have it. The Senate Finance President Pro Tem Chair, President Pro Tem and Finance Chair, Louise Lucas, I think has a license plate that says 10-1. So this is what they want. They want extreme power. They want it all, so they can control all these things. And, you know, some of our folks at the top of the food chain that are making these decisions are patting their own pockets. by some of the legislation they're passing too. So, you know, their downfall is either going to come one way or another through an election or through the feds investigating. But we're hopeful for all those.
Yeah. Well, we got a question from our live audience for you, Bryce. Let's go ahead and take that real quick. Go ahead. Shell is our host over there.
We have AJ, sir.
Thank you, Shell. Thank you, Colonel. Senator, it's a pleasure, sir. I am in Virginia, and I live in Northern Virginia. Tomorrow we'll be voting against the gerrymandering. You have my word on that, sir. My question is, I don't know how to get through to people every time I tell them that, look, the Virginia Democrats always laugh and celebrate when people talk about New York and Mamdani, because it provides them to basically not be part of a conversation, because everybody's talking about New York, despite the fact that what happened in Virginia is many, 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 many times worse than what happened in New York. But New York gets all the luster and so forth, despite the fact that Virginia is infinitely more important due to how close we are to the swamp, etc. Your opinion would be appreciated, sir. Thank you.
Hey, AJ, thank you for the question. I would just respond, New York is just New York City, right? Their whole legislature isn't tending their whole state that way. Although New York City is a major component of the state itself, their whole state isn't backwards where we're going. And I think your assessment is spot on point. And, you know, how do you get people to wake up? Well, I think they're going to wake up when they start seeing their pocketbook and their money not go as far as it's supposed to go. You know, we have other things that are causing stresses on our finances, you know, and I think some of those are temporary, and I think some of those are warranted because of the position we're in with regard to where we are in Iran, and you know, that has global implications that are hitting us. But you know, anytime Americans step onto the field of battle, Americans are going to go ahead and we're going to tighten our belts, and we're going to do that because of patriotism, and we believe in what we're doing. And I'm old enough to remember 1978 when Tehran took our embassy and they changed governments, and from here on, from that time forward, we've been fighting their proxies ever since. So I'm happy President Trump has taken these actions, and I'm happy to pay extra at the pump if that's what it's costing me. But I'm not happy that Abigail Spanberger is going to tax everything but the sun, the wind, and the air we breathe. And those things are coming down, and you know, especially in Northern Virginia, housing costs are so high. There's so many bills that they're going to lay at the table that are going to get signed by this governor that are going to directly affect you, AJ. And we're fighting like hell down in the Senate, but the House has taken a whooping last year, and the House of Delegates has a supermajority. So a lot of those new members are first-time delegates, and they brought a lot of these crazy bills that you heard listed earlier. And those bills are not dying. We've tried to kill some of those in the Senate, and even some of my colleagues that are on the other side of the aisle in the Senate have helped kill some of those bills because they know that they're going to have to face those same voters, especially in Northern Virginia, where the legislature is heavy from there. And if you look at the redistricting maps, AJ, you'll see all those start points are in Northern Virginia, and then they kind of come down throughout the state like spider webs. And some of those have been drawn for specific members like Delegate Dan Helmer up in your area towards Fairfax. So, you know, I would just tell you, keep the faith, my friend. I think I'm the furthest north Republican right now towards Northern Virginia because I have Fauquier County. So, listen, you can always call our office, Bryce at BryceReeves.com. Or Bryce at BryceReeves.com, and then BryceReeves.com, and we're at Reeves VA on Twitter. But if you need something, please tell your neighbors, all your fellow Republicans, conservatives, they're welcome to call our office. We're happy to help them with any of the issues that they have.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm not surprised that they're using the heavy blue population of Northern Virginia to try to take create these districts out of it and essentially disenfranchise those Virginians that still believe in the system, still believe in liberty, and still believe in government that's under control. And we got to take a break here real quick, but we'll see just how out of control some of this is, especially the spending. And I think that's a great linkage to make is they're going to spend you under the rock if you do this redistricting even more than what's happening right now. We'll be right back with Senator Bryce Reeves from Virginia.
News is moving faster than ever, and so are we. Worldview Tube brings you 24/7 live stream coverage and now real-time alerts when it matters most. Once you have the Worldview Tube app installed, exit the app and navigate your way to Settings. In Settings, locate the tab labeled Notifications. Select the Notifications tab. Scroll down until you locate the Worldview Tube app icon. Select the tab, and here you can turn on and customize your notification experience for the Worldview Tube app. News doesn't wait, and neither should you. Turn on push notifications to stay informed. Every headline as it happens.
This is a budget amendment to finally end the car tax. Our governor campaigned on it. It's unpopular because you work hard, you buy a car with money that you already paid taxes on, you pay a sales tax on the purchase price, you pay fees every year. It feels like the government's reaching back into your pocket again.
I don't know of anybody that enjoys paying the car tax every year. This amendment, from my perspective, is a stunt.
Democrats now say that eliminating the car tax is a stunt? Republicans fighting to make Virginians' lives more affordable is not a stunt.
People are tired of hearing politicians say that I support ending the car tax, just not today. A yes vote is to end the car tax, and a no vote is to keep the car tax.
The question is, shall floor amendment be agreed to? All in favor of that motion will say aye. Aye. Those opposed, no. No. The ayes have it. Seeing at least 8 hands, this will be a recorded vote. Have all the senators voted? Do any senators desire to change their vote?
Ayes 19, noes 21.
Floor amendment number 3 is not agreed to.
Welcome back to the Rob Maness Show. It's More War Monday here on Worldview Tube and our X Spaces simulcast. And Senator Bryce Reeves of Virginia's State House is with us today to talk about this far left turn, hard left turn that Virginia is making. And, Spanberger ran on affordability. Affordability, that was the key message. I was up in New Jersey when Mikey Sherrill won her race based on the same thing. She immediately raised taxes. And then we saw that laundry list, Bryce, at the beginning of the show. And I just had to play that tape there, the little video there of the car tax elimination going down, because I've hated the car tax since I was stationed at the Pentagon and lived in Northern Virginia in 2001, man. You still haven't been able to get rid of it, but that's just a shining example, isn't it? If you go and you don't get out and vote for against this redistricting plan, you're going to get a lot more of that, and it's going to be on steroids, isn't it?
Colonel, I couldn't agree more. You know, we had it figured out for Governor Youngkin to get rid of the car tax. The problem is Governor Youngkin announced it at his State of the Commonwealth, and the Democrats said, well, okay, we're going to hand him his first loss. So there's 5 of us on the Senate Finance that really worked on that last budget for Youngkin to ensure that those monies were put away. So at the end of the day, Democrats wound up taking control, and what happened was it was too late in the process. They weren't going to give them the car tax, so we wound up giving individuals $350 per couple, $200 per individual back on their taxes. That was supposed to help alleviate and finally get rid of the car tax. My colleague that you just played, Glenn Sturdivant, who is a phenomenal senator, and he had gotten defeated by, he originally had that seat that Hashmi had. He got defeated by Hashmi, who is now the lieutenant governor, came back, won the seat back, and he came up and devised a plan, worked his tail off to get there, to actually do the inner workings, all the finer details to get that car tax removed. And the Democrats, you saw exactly what happened. They didn't want to entertain it. If you're not doing their agenda, they're not going to do it. And we had a way to do it. And originally, even the lieutenant governor, we had won the vote via voice vote. They didn't. The Democrats didn't want to go onto the board, but when she ruled in our favor because she was doing her job, right? She could have easily just said no, it failed. But to her credit, Republicans had won the vote, the verbal vote. And they were mad at her for putting them up on the board for voting against the car tax because they know it would have worked. And so now every one of those people that voted no is going to have to account for that, especially to folks like AJ in Northern Virginia, where they had the opportunity to actually get rid of the car tax this year, but they didn't want to do it.
Yeah. What else bad is going to happen and is in the process right now from a spending and taxing perspective that may or may not have been on that list at the beginning of the show?
Well, we're in budget negotiations now. Abigail Spanberger and her great leadership example right now, we have no budget. If you can believe that. You can't make it up. Her lack of leadership has produced no budget. So, and, Youngkin left us a great budget. And, you would, how do I equate this, sir? When you had change of command, you'd take over a wing. And usually it's to take over a higher responsibility in the military means you've done pretty good. It's not always the Peter principle, but usually you have pretty good caliber of people that are taking that over, right? Well, if you have a guy like Glenn Youngkin who left you a $2.7 billion surplus, had all these great things happening, get money back, the economy's roaring, people are, you'd kind of come in and go, hey, he's doing some things right. How do I tweak the things that I need to tweak on maybe the social side of the Democrat Party, but the governance side of the money side is working great. If this was Terry McAuliffe again, I guarantee you he wouldn't have done a whole lot to Youngkin's budget. But the Democrats didn't want to have any of that. And now we have I think it's a $1.4 billion difference between the House and the Democrats' budget plan. They've already eaten the whole 2.7 up, and now all these other taxes are in addition to that. I'm on finance. I'm not a conferee, but supposedly we're going back on the 23rd of April to vote on the budget, the 22nd to vote on all these amendments or veto session, and the 21st is a referendum. So we'll spend another $120,000 of taxpayer money, roughly, to bring the legislature back for a few days to vote on these things. So what's still in the bill, I couldn't tell you at this point, because for all I know, they ripped up the last bills that came through that were voted on, and they can come up with something brand new in this conference committee. We don't know. The rules require they have to give us 48 hours notice, and we're actually on 48 hours notice recall right now. Because we're in a special session type environment where they could call us back and we have to vote. So,
how do you eat up 2.7 of a surplus? I mean, did they just say everybody gets $100 million here in every program? I mean, or what? I mean, did they implement some new program that's eating it up? I mean, that's a big chunk of money to eat up in one big bite.
It is.
And you don't even have a budget.
Well, they're going to blame some of it on Trump, with his cost cutting and some of the Doge money and some of those things that were one-time monies that maybe aren't coming back down through us. Some of it's going to be Medicaid and what we do with Medicaid waivers, but the reality is there were just so many spending bills that both chambers had from the Democrat side. If you go in and look, I don't even think Republicans got one or two items off the budget that they actually needed for their jurisdictions. And, I had two jurisdictions in my legislative district that last year, Orange County, where I live, went without water for 14 days. So we had to take and get some monies there. So we were able to hold on to the monies that were appropriated under Youngkin, and the Democrats not taking those monies. But yeah, there's a lot of spending that's going on, a whole lot of spending.
Yeah, and of course they don't care about fraud. The Medicaid program in every state, I think, has a sizable amount of fraud. I don't care what state you're in. And then you see the fraud that's been discovered in Minnesota through the Somali immigrant population and been allowed to continue to happen under the Democrat governor and legislature. Do you guys face any challenges like that? I mean, you are at the spigot of the federal largesse of coming out of that beltway. So there's got to be a lot of fraud going on. Is there no effort to try to get that under control?
Well, Colonel, you're bringing up a point that just hit the news last week. The Democrat Party chairman happens to be a colleague in the Senate, and he has been coming under scrutiny, let's say, from a reporter in Richmond about some of his nonprofit monies coming out of the General Assembly and into his entity, specifically for rehabilitation, for drugs and all that stuff. So we find that very interesting that these things are happening now. All of a sudden, originally I think the money's appropriated, and you'd have to read the article again, where maybe a couple $100,000. Now you're talking about $55 million being appropriated for these areas, and some of the things that he has been working in and around is going to some of his established 501c3s in those communities. So, I hope the OSIG or I don't get much hope in the Attorney General's office investigating, because our Attorney General is threatened, made the comments about our former Speaker Todd Gilbert and killing his wife and those things. So, I'm hopeful maybe the FBI will come in and start looking at some of these things like that and helping weed out some of those folks that are in office now. I know it's happening. We know it's happening, but getting somebody to investigate, it's been pretty tough.
Yeah, which is disappointing and surprising because of the amount of federal dollars that come into that place, especially Northern Virginia. A lot of the people work for the federal government that live there. As I mentioned earlier, I lived there when I was stationed at the Pentagon. So it's in America's interest that if there is fraud going on, that fraud be looked at, investigated, and brought under control, because we can't afford to waste any more dollars. We have major problems, Senator Reeves, not just at the state level, but at the federal level, especially from DHS, the Department of Homeland Security, the Transportation Security Administration, all of which are not only underfunded, but they're being used as political hammers right now and not getting paid. As we see more and more events, I think there were 2 events yesterday where a passenger aircraft had to be landed at other airports where their destinations were not, because of threats on board the airplane. So the threats are real, and we're not getting our money's worth, in my opinion. Something's happening there, and we need to get something done. And in the next segment, I want to talk about that, exactly that. With your national security background, you and I, as I've mentioned a couple times, we've been to many of the same schools. I want to get your take on some of the things Secretary of War Hegseth is doing, and most importantly, the domestic terrorism threat by Islamists that we're now seeing show itself, and what your thoughts are on that, Bryce. We'll be right back with Senator Bryce Reeves from Virginia here on More War Monday.
Hello, I'm Brandon House. Is the government tracking you? Do they have access to all your data? Well, if you go to worldviewtalk.com, you'll find out about a cell phone company that, well, does not store your data. They don't do that. This is what they're known for. They don't store your data. You have privacy. You're not being tracked. That's why a lot of folks are turning to worldviewtalk.com. You'll find their prices are very competitive. All the details are there at worldviewtalk.com. Again, worldviewtalk.com. Oh, while you're there, not only do they have cell phones that aren't tracking you, you can find out about how to get a satellite phone. Should the whole system go down and you want to communicate with a family member or a loved one, you might want to have a satellite phone. Or how about their solar generators? They have great solar generators. Check them all out right now. Worldviewtalk.com, worldviewtalk.com.
News tonight about the deadly shooting at Old Dominion University. The suspect, a convicted ISIS supporter, released from prison early. And what we're now learning about how ROTC students took down the attacker. Here's ABC's Chief Justice correspondent, Pierre Thomas.
Tonight, we're learning chilling new details about how a former National Guardsman who served time in prison for his ties to ISIS could launch a terror attack at Old Dominion University, killing a beloved ROTC instructor and wounding 2 students.
Come out the door now with your hands up and follow the instructions.
Overnight, agents raiding the home of the suspect, Mohammed Jallo, in Sterling, Virginia.
This is the FBI. We have a search warrant.
And today, the ATF charged a Virginia man with illegally selling Jallo a Glock 44 pistol. Jallo was barred from owning a gun after he was convicted of a felony for providing support to ISIS. What happened here in Constant Hall in the building behind me was a nightmare. A gunman walked in and moments later was firing away.
People were hiding in like the rooms. People were going on top of the parking garage, like hiding under the cars. Like it was insane.
The FBI says when Jallo opened fire, brave ROTC students jumped in and subdued him. Sources telling ABC News one of them fatally stabbed the suspect. Tonight, this tight-knit campus shaken.
I guess I'm still kind of tense. Like, even when I came back from the room at the time, my heart was like pounding.
Eddie Flack coming to pay respects to that ROTC instructor, his friend, Lieutenant Colonel Brandon Shaw.
Brandon, I love you, man. I miss you. You don't deserve this, nor did anybody.
The suspect did have ties to the school. He had been taking online classes after being released from prison 3 years early in 2024. But tonight there are questions about how closely he was being monitored. His last contact with his probation officer was 4 months ago.
All right, Pierre Thomas for us tonight.
Welcome back to the Rob Maness Show. It's More War Monday, and we're talking about Virginia and its hard left turn to become East California. With State Senator Bryce Reeves, who is also a former Army soldier, Army Ranger, has been through Texas A&M, also the Harvard Kennedy School, where I graduated from, and he is a graduate of the Army War College, and I'm a graduate of the Navy War College, and we're going to talk about all of those things. And Bryce, there's a lot to that little clip has a lot packed in it. That I want to chat with you about. First of all, is this effort to ban assault weapons, so-called assault weapons, which in my mind don't exist in the civilian world, and to actually make people give their firearms up at a time when we're under attack because we've started major combat operations against Iran, and appropriately so, and now we've had at least 4 Islamist terrorist attacks, this being one of them.
Well, sir, I couldn't agree more. What's really disappointing to me is the gentleman who patroned that bill is Delegate Dan Helmer, who is a Democrat from Northern Virginia and also a West Point graduate. So I don't know what they're teaching at West Point, but when he went through, it certainly wasn't the Constitution. And I know he swore an oath because he swore the cloth of the country, and I'm not going to demean his service, but it was pretty frustrating for me to see somebody who has worn the cloth want to make us gun-free zones, knowing well what happened I'd also like to publicly state for the record, I want to thank Secretary Hegseth, especially the Secretary of the Army and the Sergeant Major of the Army for awarding those cadets the various service medals in which they received those. And, you know, those cadets, you know, they need to be commissioned officers. They've already experienced something many in uniform have never experienced, and that is to take action boldly at their own cost. And you know, these cadets, they're kind of enlisted in that in-between zone, as you know. And I'm glad they took action, because it could have been a lot worse. You know, what also is troubling is the guy was let loose 3 years earlier. And this is the left's mantra. We're going to have another constitutional referendum. We have 3 more left in Virginia that'll be this November. It's the marriage amendment, it's the abortion issue, and then the voting rights restoration automatically for felons like the gentleman who just committed this atrocious crime at ODU. So, you know, that bill is going to get signed, supposedly, if it still holds. There's going to be a grandfather clause. But what does that say about future Virginians and their ability to get and have those weapon systems? And what's really irritating is the majority leader in the Senate couldn't tell you the difference between a pistol, an AR, anything. No nomenclature. He was talking about putting a telescope on a pistol, and you know, he doesn't know. Never owned a gun, never even shot a gun, but he certainly is going to tell you what he wants as an assault, quote unquote, assault rifle. And I proceeded to have an argument with him. I said, if I have a Dr. Pepper can in my hand and I proceed to beat you over the forehead with it, and you charge me with malicious wounding, was that Dr. Pepper can a weapon? And did I assault you with it? Okay, well, that's an assault weapon. So, you know, those are you can't fix stupid, sir. You can just legislate for it, but they're just, it's tough. And I'm hearing from the community. I mean, Abigail Spanberger has been the best gun salesman in the Commonwealth of Virginia.
Yeah, I saw the protests. The guys were armed and handing out 30-round magazines for free.
I got one.
I wish I'd have been around. I'd have come and got one myself. But is it true that they put a carve out for legislators in this law so that they never have to follow that law?
Yeah, they did, and we beat them up on the floor of the Senate about it. Senator Obenshain, who's a great constitutional lawyer and I would say a great trial attorney, stood up and just blasted them about it because they were saying, well, you know, we all come under threat. Well, so do normal people. What makes us different? Aren't we supposed to be the same as the people we represent? And he pointed that out. And yeah, so they wound up stripping that out of the bill, but it was originally in the bill till we called them on the carpet. We caught it at the last minute, too, by the way.
Yeah, when we were stationed there at the Pentagon, it was from 1999 to mid 2002, and we went through obviously 9/11. We went through the anthrax threat. We were in Fairfax County, where the postal worker died, was my post office, and then we went through the DC sniper. So it's not like everybody doesn't face threats, folks. And you guys need to get your act together. Not you, Bryce, but the people that are passing this law and come to an understanding and really listen to what their forefathers have said in the state of Virginia about liberty and the rights to self-defense of not just yourself, but your family and your responsibility to defend your country. And the AR-15 is the modern musket. Where if the real militia is ever called up, we're going to need them.
Well, you're right, sir. Senator Serville, the majority leader, said that our founding fathers could never anticipate the type of weapons we have now. And I said, well, the type of weapon doesn't matter. The reason they said it, they had muskets then. They understand that's a military weapon. But that's the only way they can fight tyranny in their own government, and that's why they wanted it. It doesn't matter what the weapon system is. It's just the ability to have those weapons in order to, you know, if our nation military has those same weapons and it's a common weapon you and I trained on and everyone else, so we're supposed to fight them with muskets, right?
Exactly.
What the hell is wrong with you people? But they don't see it that way. They just don't ever think it'll happen in their time frame. And, you know, my dad turns 89. He's a Vietnam vet, April 5th.
Mm-hmm.
And I just lost the last of my great uncles who was a World War II guy. That wasn't that long ago. And fascism rose in Europe and Hitler was here. And I think there's this whole generation, maybe after mine and yours, that have never learned that it's real. It's happened. You can see it.
Mm-hmm.
You see it
Yeah.
now in Israel of what's happening to them from the Palestinians. And you see these things. The world changes, but the people stay the same. And those same grudges last for thousands of years.
Yeah,
And
absolutely right.
we have to have the ability to defend ourselves. I told somebody when she signs the bill, I've become an outlaw, and I've never thought I'd be an outlaw myself. But you know, I was in law enforcement. I was on our TAC team. You know, I'm a trained shooter. I know how to entry. I know all these things, and you know, I pray to God we never get to that point in this in our country where we're having to defend our homes using those things. But I don't want to be caught without it. It's a good insurance
You're exactly
policy.
right. You're exactly right. You never know, especially with the amount of threats that we've allowed to come into the country, especially under the Biden administration. You never know. Well, I wanted to ask you before we go, Senator Reeves, Secretary Hegseth has directed a couple of things that I'm curious about. And since you're in Virginia, one of the things he's directed is the reinstatement of what's known as the Reconciliation Monument that reconciled the North and the Southern states in Arlington Cemetery, and is the headstone of the artist. And I wanted to get your thoughts on that. I'm an advocate, supporter of that. I've been to the cemetery with the family of the artist Ezekiel Moses, and we want to see that put back in place, not only for him but for the country. And then two, the secretary is establishing a task force to review the war colleges to get all the woke out, to short-term it, to shorthand it, but really to assess the faculty and the curriculum to make sure it's producing lethal warfighters, because we've had so many failures at the senior officer level in wartime, like the Afghanistan debacle. Your thoughts on those things based on your experience and background? Where are you from?
Well, I agree like you, sir. Our guest speaker when I was at the War College was Rachel Maddow, so I don't know what that tells you. But I went to Carlisle, but I think you hit the nail on the head. There's no one that's been more supportive of trying to keep our history where it is. I'm working with the Shenandoah Battlefield Trust. I've worked with the Civil War Trust, which is now the American Battlefield Trust, to try to get these monuments put in respected places and without getting destroyed. I was on the bill that tried to, I actually made sure we saved them. The only word I forgot when we wrote the bill was in perpetuity. I should have said in perpetuity, and then that one monument they had out in Charlottesville wouldn't have got melted. But I've been able to get 2 park systems over in Culpeper, Cedar Mountain, and oh my gosh, I'm drawing a blank. But you know, the Calvary Battlefield over in Culpeper, and so yeah, I just had a conversation last week about this. I would love to be, if Secretary Hegseth would like me to be part of that panel to help get the woke out of the War College, I volunteer.
Okay.
But I don't know that he'll call me. But you know, I think we've got to get back to the basic fundamentals of land, air, sea war fighting. You know, we're worried about can a guy be a girl and a girl be a guy, and what uniforms and all these other things. And you know, thank God, you know, the Commandant of the Marine Corps is a classmate from Texas A&M, and he's got his head on screwed on right, and he's got his Marines training, and you know, they're getting ramping up for what might be the inevitable of a sea beach assault. And you know, Marines have never had a problem recruiting. So my youngest son will be a Marine hopefully after this next December. He did 3 years Army ROTC, but now he wants to go wear the cloth of the Marine Corps, and I'm pretty happy about it. So we'll not so happy about he might be headed over, but you know, as all parents,
yeah, well,
I'm proud as hell of his willingness to want to go serve. He's a senior at Texas A&M, so but yeah, I agree with you. I will what I'll do, sir, is I'll try to get a quicker update for you and I'll shoot you something over and give you an
That'd be great.
update on where we are on that. I don't have all the details, but I was working with Colt Purrier, an attorney out of Charlottesville, who was a Ranger Battalion guy as well, and he's been kind of monitoring that too.
Well, thank you very much, sir. And thank you for all your time today. Thanks for letting us help get the story of Virginia out, because everybody needs to know and support everybody there. And we wish you well and wish you success in fighting the crazy Democrats, even though they may have the power right now.
Well, we'll get there, sir. You know, we just got to hold the line, as I always get told. You got to hold the line, so we'll hold the line. But I'll get you that intel too, sir, so you can keep tracking that, and we'll get the word out on that monument and see where we can get, how far we can get on it. Look forward to working with you.
All right. Thanks a lot, Senator Reeves.
Thanks,
we appreciate
Colonel.
it. God bless you. Tomorrow's Training Tuesday. We'll see you then on Worldview Tube and our X Spaces simulcast.
We have a big announcement, folks, something we've been waiting on for several months, and it's now here. It's called Bella Melt. You were on it for just 1 week when you lost 3 pounds. So in the first week, you lost 3 pounds on this, right?
That is correct.
Your GLP-1 is a natural hormone that's in every single one of our bodies. And your GLP-1 lets you know if you're full. It's a satiety hormone.